Good morning, everybody.
Good
morning.
How are y'all doing today? All right, still awake or getting awake? All right. So I'll have you open, please, to Matthew 24 and verse 3. And I'll just ask a couple questions. So if you were in a building, sir?
Sorry to interrupt, but could I check your microphone? We don't seem to be coming through here. Oh, you're on the orange. Now you're,
Oh,
okay.
perfect.
Okay.
I seem to do that every time. I
Okay.
think my clip came off too. Oh well. Just put it in my pocket. All right, so Matthew 24, verse 3. Anyway, so back to the questions. If you were in a building much like this one, and you smelled smoke, what would you do? Would you investigate the smell of the smoke, or would you just leave it be? And if moments later you still smelled smoke and it got hotter, what would you do? Would you investigate, or would you just leave it be? What if moments later you smelled smoke, it got real hot in here, and someone yelled fire? What would you do? Would you investigate, or would you leave it be? And so Matthew 24 and verse 3, basically, if we want to read it here, it says, "And he sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?" And so the reason I asked the questions of a fire is there were signs that there was a fire in the building. And we would be crazy to not want to investigate, to not want to know more, to not seek out why does it smell like smoke? Why is it hot in here all of a sudden? So in the same sense, we should know the signs the Lord's coming, the Lord's second coming.
Amen.
We should not be foolish to that. We should want to investigate. And so we're going to basically, Bible many times over tells us the signs of the Lord's return. And so we're going to go through a lot of them individually, and I want to give you pertinent facts of today's society of why that sign is becoming fulfilled.
Amen.
And so I would say also a message like this at times may be hard to digest. And we're going to talk about some hard things, and there might be a natural urge for fear or anger after a message like this. And I pray that you would listen to the Holy Spirit instead of your heart. Okay? And I'd also say that I had to preach or teach this message to myself first before I could bring it to you and do the same. And so this message is called is titled "A Call to Witness." Okay? And so why would the signs of Jesus' return be a call to witness? Anybody?
People to be saved.
Right. So if he's coming back, judgment's coming with him, right?
He can come at any time.
He could come at any time, and why is that important?
We need to be ready.
We need to be ready. We need to be busy. We need to be doing what he asked us to do, right? And so, like I said, we're going to go through, and we're going to go through all of these signs that he has put forth in the Bible for us, and we will see that we are running out of time. I know a lot of people say, well, we've always been running out of time. Since Jesus was on this earth, we've been running out of time, and that is true. But we'll show you today that today has never been worse than before. You know what I mean? Okay. Also, another disclaimer. There are two things we will not be doing today. We will not be date setting.
Amen.
There we go. And we will also not be trying to personally decipher like apocalyptic scriptures, like in Revelations. We're not going to be, why did he say that? We're not breaking any of that down. We're just talking about very clear cut signs in the Bible. So let's go ahead and look at some of the signs of the Lord's return. If we continue reading Matthew 24, let's go verses 4 and 5. And it says in verse 4, "And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you." In verse 5, "For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." Just a little fact, since Jesus walked on this earth about 2,000 years ago, there have been 65 well-known documented people that have claimed to be Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I'm not talking like some crazy guy at Circle K who said, I'm Jesus Christ. And, no. People that actually had followings, that had supposed miracles, like cults. So 65.
Yeah.
Boom. That's fulfilled. Many have come in his name, said that he is the Christ, or they are the Christ. Let's continue in reading in verse 6. It says, And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Now, this is another one that people say, well, we've been at war forever. Since the Garden of Eden, we've been at war, right? Well, in the last decade, so last 10 years, only 10 countries in the entire world have been at peace. Only 10. And even then, some of those 10 have issues with extremists, like Islamic extremists, rioting in their streets and causing mayhem and all kinds of craziness. And then there's also some that have ongoing issues with neighboring countries that may not be a full-blown war, but they're not at peace. So,
They're civil wars.
right. So not even 10 in the last decade can say that they have been without war or conflict. But let's continue. So in verse 7, let's go ahead, we'll read that. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. And so again, we see nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. That's similar to verse 6. But here's some new things. We got famines, pestilences, earthquakes. Here's some more statistics to solidify this. Roughly 10% of the entire world's population doesn't have enough food to live healthy. Not a balanced meal, anything, if anything at all. So 10% of 7.5 billion people, right? That's a massive amount of people that are suffering. And not only that, but we have 3.1 million children dying every year to malnutrition. So it's not just old people, it's not just, the middle-aged people, it's children too. And so, again, we are living this out. We are seeing this unfold right before our eyes. Yeah, but it gets worse because we know that since 1960, natural disasters have septupled, and I had to look that word up because I wasn't sure what that meant. But that means 7 times the amount from 1960 to today. The amount of earthquakes, floods, droughts, extreme weather, landslides, you name it, it has increased 7-fold. That's pretty substantial. Some would call that climate change. Anyway. Also now we are hearing of earthquakes appearing in places where they don't normally appear. That seems strange, We have, they always blame, like if we have anything around here, they blame it on the mine, but the mine will say, well, we haven't blown anything up in a couple of years now or whatever, So, anyway, let's go ahead and continue. Let's go into verse 8 and 9. And it says, All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And I just want to give you some really alarming statistics because this becomes really personal at this point. They say that between 10,000 and 100,000 Christians are killed every year for their faith. That's us. They want to kill us. Don't blame them. We're pretty cool. But they also say that 70 million Christians were martyred for their faith since Jesus walked on the earth. That's pretty shocking too. I actually heard on the radio the other day that 1 in 9 Christians are being persecuted for their faith right now. Right? I also heard that Christians are being murdered at a near genocide rate. So we are being nearly genocided around the world. Can we say that this is being fulfilled? I think so. I think so. Anyway, let's continue. In verse 10 it says, "And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another." Now, I had issue with this because offended to me means like, hey, you offended me, right? Well, in the Bible, it doesn't actually, or in the King James Version, the offended doesn't actually mean like you've offended my whatever, my beliefs,
Right.
right?
Right.
So offended actually means here to entice to sin. So we can read that as, "And there shall be many enticed to sin, and they shall betray one another, and shall hate one another." And so, we know that, hold on here, mixed up my notes. Basically what it's trying to say is false Christians, falsely converted Christians, will eventually turn their back. They will go to sin, they will turn against us, and they will betray us. And so we can kind of see that in today's world. You know, I had arguments with people on Facebook, simple biblical truths. You know, is abortion a sin? Is homosexuality a sin? And I'll have pastors say, well, we can't answer that.
Yeah.
And so they haven't betrayed me to the sense of sending me off to die, but they've betrayed me in the sense of now, who is my brother? I can't call everyone that's a Christian my brother, right? And so let's just keep reading. Let's read 13 or 11 through 13. I'm sorry. "And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved." That was a mouthful there, I'm sorry. "The love of many shall wax cold." That should give you chills. You know? But is it any surprise in our modern society? I mean, we see this on a daily. Let's say mass murders have increased by roughly 500% since the 1990s. Right? Let's see, New York passed a bill that could abort babies up to the date of birth. And you know what? They celebrated it.
Yes.
They said, yes, we did it. We can murder people or murder babies up to the day of their birth. We did that. That is nothing to celebrate.
Right.
Nothing to celebrate. And I actually did a little more research into that, and I found that 40% of the states permit later abortions, late-term abortions. 40%, that's almost half of the United States says that's okay. Then he had old Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. He even wants to have a babies aborted after they're born. Right?
Yep. Yep.
Can you imagine carrying your child for 9 months, going through the birth pains, actually giving birth to the child, giving it a name, and then sending it off into the closet to be murdered? That's being fulfilled here. It's sickening. It really is. It is sickening. And it's really no surprise because later in Matthew 24 in verse 36, I'll go ahead and read it to you. You can kind of look over it if you want. "But of that day and hour knoweth," it was 37, but we'll read 36 anyway. "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be." And it goes on after that to say that they were doing common things, eating and drinking and marrying and giving into marriage and that sort of thing. But the gist of what it's saying was that sin will be so great in the last times that it will usher God's cleansing plan part 2. Right? So he brought the flood the first time. His second coming, he will bring the fire.
Right.
And he will cleanse the earth. And so, you know, you don't really find a whole lot of verses that really specifically say a lot about the sin of what was going on in Noah's time. But I did flip back there, and in Genesis, you don't have to flip there, but Genesis 6:5, this is right before the flood pretty much. It says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." I mean, that doesn't say the exact sins, but that tells you that it was bad.
Yeah.
And there was only, what, a couple 100,000 people back then? Maybe a couple million? And there's 7.5 billion of us today, and we're all connected by the internet, right? So you could literally turn on your computer and fulfill any lust and desire and evil that you want in a matter of seconds.
That's right.
7.5 billion of us can, all at the same time. And yeah, like I said, the entire world is mapped together with the internet. And you can find every sick and twisted, violent, and pornographic thing you could ever desire on that internet right now. That is, every imagination of the thoughts of the heart can be evil continually, and you don't even have to leave the house or commit any crimes against anybody. And we say that's okay, right? So let's continue reading. I know this is hard to digest, isn't it? We're talking about a lot today. Let's go on to verse 14. "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall come the end." And so, why did he end on a good note? We just talked about all these horrible things, and we end on the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's because that's what it's all about. When we're seeing these evil things, we should be out there telling people that there's something more than this. Right? Right. So, yeah, like I wrote, notice the significance of the gospel of Christ. All these previous signs held negative significance, but this is a light in the dark. And let's go ahead and turn to Acts 2 and verse 19. Acts 2, verse 19. And so this is Peter addressing the people that were saying that the disciples and the apostles were drunk with wine. That's why they were speaking in tongues. They just received the Holy Spirit. And these verses here are actually from Joel in the Old Testament. And they are in reference to the Lord's return the second time, not the first time. And so Acts 2, verse 19. I'll go ahead and read it. You follow along, please. "And I will show wonders in heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke." And so going off of this, just this, the fire, the vapor of smoke, I want you to know that since the 1990s, the number of acres burned nationally in the United States by wildfire has doubled. It ain't global warming that's causing that.
Amen.
I'll tell you that right. That's right, amen. Okay, volcanic eruptions killed more last year than have killed in nearly the last 2 decades combined. Ain't no global warming causing volcanoes, I guarantee you that.
Amen.
And so let's go ahead and continue on to Acts 2, verse 20. "The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before that great and notable day of the Lord has come." So some things here, a lot of conspiracy theorists like to add stuff to this. We don't have to add anything, but we can just take it at surface value. But we did have a blood moon tetrad which is 4 lunar eclipses in a row a couple years ago. Okay, we're not going to tie in, a lot of people like to tie in that they fall on Jewish holidays. Well, they do, but Jewish holidays usually fall on lunar events anyway. Right, so,
It's a sign in the heaven.
right, it is a sign in the heavens, that's exactly right. The moon, what would it say? The moon will be turned into blood. And we did have blood moons. It don't get any easier than that, it said it right in the words. This is another one that was actually really interesting, and I don't think enough people heard about it, but it's called the Revelation 12 sign. It happened on 23 September of 2017. This one was really cool. If you didn't hear about it, look it up. I'll give you a quick summary. The planets and the stars all align in a way that completely imitated Revelation 12. And I mean, it is, eerie is not the good word for it, because we knew God planned it that way. But it literally imitated. The woman in the heavens gave birth, or let's see, the woman gave birth, and the dragon was ready to eat the child. Revelation 12, you guys relatively familiar with it? Anyway, and then it says later in Revelation 12 that the dragon swiped stars out of the sky. Well, immediately after this Revelation 12 sign appeared, like a week or a month later, we had a draconian meteor shower from the dragon. That's what draconian means, the constellation of the dragon. And so it literally played out in the heavens exactly the same way it is in Revelation 12. Exactly. Look it up. Think I'm crazy? Look it up. It's real. And so let's go ahead. We're going to flip to Luke 21 and verse 25. We'll bounce around just a little bit today. But Luke 21. Luke 21, verse 25. Again, this is also talking or referring to coming of the Lord, that sort of thing. And so, let's go ahead and I'll read verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon. We saw that in the last verses that we read. And in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations. We saw that in Matthew with perplexity. And the sea and the waves roaring. That's a good one. That's something we didn't hear in the last couple, right? And so, I just want you to know that Hurricane Florence was one of those on record, flooding the entire not the entire East Coast, but the East Coast. And we also had Hurricane Michael was one of the strongest storms to hit Florida in a century. And that all happened in a couple months from each other? Was that last year? But my biggest question is here, why is every storm and every natural disaster record-breaking? Every time. It's like everyone just makes it worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And so we're progressing in intensity, right? So have you turn, this should be the last one I have you turn to, 2 Timothy 3. We're going to go through some of these. So we talked about natural disasters. We talked about, some outward signs that, we don't really have any control over. Well, we don't have control over anything, but we definitely don't have control over what the earth and the moon and the sky and the stars is all doing. But this, when we get to 2 Timothy 3, we're going to talk about some personal things that we're going to see. So 2 Timothy 3, we're going to read 1 through 5. If you want to follow along, you can, by all means. So we'll just go ahead and start. 2 Timothy 3, verse 1, we'll go through verse 5. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heedy, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. Wow, that's quite the list, huh? I love when the Bible gives lists, because, that was one of the things we had issues with the Jewish folks, that they would be like, well, it didn't say this. So God makes sure we throw a list in there, pretty much everything, you can't say, well, I didn't do that, Anyway, so let's break it down. I took almost all of these, and I want to give you an example of where this pertains to our society today, okay? So lovers of self was one of the first ones there, and also without natural affection kind of fits into this too. Lovers of self without natural affection. And I want to ask you, how about that father in Colorado that killed his pregnant wife and smothered his 2 children? And then dumped them in an oil field, or in the oil container where he worked. Sick. That is sick. And that is fulfilling this. I don't know how you could sleep with yourself at night if you had to remind yourself of that every day. So let's go on. The next one was covetous.
Not only that, but you read that all the time in the news anymore.
Yeah.
Mothers starving their children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just gave you one. I mean, we could talk all day about all the evil that's going on in the world, but I just want to give you like 1 or 2 examples. But yeah, you're right. It's almost a daily occurrence somewhere in the news where someone did something awful and evil. But let's talk about covetous.
I have something to say. Did you hear about the incident in New York where an old gentleman, he's 71 years old, on the train, what is it, what do you call it, the subway. And this woman, young woman, African American, was cussing up a storm on the subway.
Uh-huh.
So as he was getting off, he had asked her, please, have some manners. And I guess she didn't like it, and she pushed him off the subway onto the ground, and he died a month later.
Yep. That's a perfect example.
Did you hear about that?
We'll get into that later. That's where fierce comes in.
I had not.
Oh my, she just pushed him because he had asked him, or he had asked her to be polite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop cussing.
But that's a sign. That is exactly what we're talking about.
Amen.
Do we have to be like, oh, I didn't know this was coming. I didn't know Jesus was coming back. Everything looked peachy to me. We can't say that. So let's continue on. We got a lot to go through here in the next 10 minutes. So covetous is basically lovers of money. This should be an easy one. Everybody loves money. It's the root of all evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what about your prosperity preachers that needed new jets? They told their congregation, hey, I need a new jet. Y'all bring it in because Daddy needs a new jet to bring the gospel to the world.
Heard that one.
Please. What about that?
I can give you an example of a pastor in Colorado who bankrupted the church to land an airplane.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. And you got that one pastor that he got his wife a $200,000 sports car.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Could you imagine if Pastor Leonard's not in here, but if his wife just rolled in like a Lamborghini one day, y'all be like,
I leave.
we need a parking lot and you got a Lamborghini. Like, come on. Anyway, so let's continue on. So boasters and proud, those are kind of two that coincide together. And we're not dumb. We see all the pride parades, right? Gay pride, transgender pride. Everything is pride. I have to be proud of everything that I am. And shame on you if you're not proud of me for being proud, right? All right. So blasphemers, that's a pretty given. I mean, they've been around forever. But I'm sure some of y'all didn't know, about a decade ago, a bunch of unrepentant sinners found out that there was an unforgivable sin. So they did it, right? They went on YouTube and hundreds of thousands of people were watching people blaspheme the Holy Spirit on purpose, just to say there's no God. Well, you're going to find out. You're going to find out soon, maybe. Hopefully sooner than later. Yeah. So let's keep going down. I think we were disobedient to parents. That's a given. I mean, we're not even allowed to spank our kids anymore. So it's no wonder that your kids are going to be crazy and disobedient and cause all kinds of mayhem. But let's continue on. Unthankful. Well, we got to get cooking here. So only 33% of Americans surveyed that they were happy in 2017. And you know what? That's a 2% increase from the year before. Right? So let's go on to unholy. Saw-Rita here is supposed to have a Satanist, I don't know if he's already done it, but they were supposed to do an invocation at the town hall meeting.
Oh,
No.
How do you pray as a Satanist? Dear Satan. What? That's nonsense.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's happened, but anyway.
No, they rescinded it, and then they took out that no one can pray. No one from the community can come in and pray.
Perfect, so
Like
ruin it for
pastor
everybody.
anymore.
Well, that's what they wanted. They wanted
Yeah.
to ruin it for
Yeah.
everybody because they're also, a lot of Satanists are working to have a Baphomet. Now, I don't know if y'all have seen a Baphomet statue. I'll give you a very discreet description of it. But they want a statue of Satan next to the Ten Commandments
oh.
at courthouses all around the United States.
Oh.
Baphomet is basically a transgender goat. That's the easiest way to say it. So they want that next to the Ten Commandments. Come on. And so truce breakers, just quick, how many times have the Palestinians and Israelis and North Korea and Pakistan and India broken ceasefire agreements or done something they weren't supposed to that was truce breaking, right?
Yeah.
False accusers. This is an easy one because we have Justice Brett Kavanaugh, right? He had at least one, I don't know, the article keeps flying around, but at least one person that accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault said that they made it up. At least one. And that already fulfills here. And that, I mean, that when you lie like that, you've lied to the entire American people.
Justice Roy Moore, they ruined
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
off lies.
Yep. So let's keep going. Incontinent, which means without self-control. We see riots all over the United States about the silliest things. Public meltdowns of catastrophic proportion, right? Kind of like what you were saying about the subway. That's obnoxious. There is no self-control.
Right.
I'll tell you one a little bit closer to home. In Phoenix, very recently, there was a road rage incident that ended up with a child under the age of 10 being shot in the head. A road rage incident. You cut me off, so I kill your kid.
Yeah.
America.
He followed him home. followed
Right.
him to the people's house.
Right. It's tragic. Absolutely tragic. I got like 4 minutes, and I got a lot to talk about. Let's just go through break. Just kidding. So fierce means not tame or savage. Easy example of this, the guy that killed those Muslims in New Zealand, I watched the video, I shouldn't have, but I did. I had to see it. I couldn't believe it. He almost had like no sense of, there was like no adrenaline pumping in his blood. When he was killing all those people, it was just so cold and so like, this is just something I do every day. They just gun him down. And then he laughed about it in his car when he drove off. Fierce. Despises of those that are good. This is an easy one. It is now evil to be Christian. It is evil to have Christian ideas.
Because it's hate speech.
It is. It's hate speech. How dare you talk about my sin like that? So we'll skip through that. Lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God.
That's right. But they're not here today.
Yeah, and yeah. And so my thing is, this is America. This is the Christian church in America is lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God.
When they start doing stuff on Sunday.
Right. Having a form of godliness but denying its power. That was like one of the last things. This one hurts. This hurts because this is some of the New Age Christianity that we see today. They say, well, we believe in Christ, that he was a good guy. Well, we believe in everything but the story of creation. Well, we believe in everything but Noah's flood, because that's a little too much. We can't necessarily believe that. So they've completely denied the power of God.
Yeah.
God's just a dude.
Yeah.
Have some reverence. For real. Anyway, we're in the last couple minutes here. So I ask you now, I know we ran through a bunch of stuff. Has God gotten your attention today? Because we would be fools to say that it's not bad enough for Jesus to come back. It is. It's really bad. And so, I know this is a two-part message, and I won't get to the next part the next week, but the following week we'll get to it. But I'm not here to talk about the end of the world. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to do is to get you to, I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do now that you know that Jesus could be right around the corner? He could be pulling in a parking lot right now. In a white car. He could be at the door. He could be pulling into the driveway. He could be down the block or around the corner. Or he could be right behind you, ready to take you home today. So you better hope that you're busy when he comes back. Because Matthew 24, if you skip, I know I didn't tell you to hold your place. You don't have to turn there. I can read it to you. Matthew 24, 45 through 51. Actually, I got a copy and paste right there. It says, "Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing." Verse 47, "Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods." 48, "But if that evil servant shall say in his heart, The Lord delayeth his coming." Who's that sound like? Everyone that says, he can't come. He's not coming anytime soon. "My Lord delayeth his coming." Verse 49, "And shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken. The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. And there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And so, I didn't give you all of this craziness. I didn't want to hurt your heart today, or make you feel anxious or scared. I want you to get busy for the Lord. Start doing the work that he called you to do.
Amen.
And so in a couple weeks from now, we'll go through why it's important to witness, why people feel like they don't have to witness, or why they're afraid to witness. And we're going to use all this revival excitement that we always get, and we're going to put it to work this time.
Amen.
And we're going to get people saved. And we're going to tell people about the Lord. All right?
Amen.
Any questions? All right. We'll see you in 15.
Good job.
All right, you're dismissed. We'll be back in 15.